I like Robotech.
Yeah, I like Robotech. I like the show. And that doesn't mean I'm a Macross fan with a concussion. I like the changes done to the show. I like more of the show than the first saga. I like the new generation. I like the Masters. I even like the Sentinels a tiny bit. It's controversial among some people to be this way, but it's how I am and it's not likely to change. Sorry. Again.
That whole topic of why I like the show, and what I don't like about the show, and why I dislike similar shows that other people like, and why I try not to take opinions personally, is going to be a whole side thing that this video is not about. Instead, I'm going to be trying to tackle something that's going to go down in history as a little bit of an anomaly for the Robotech franchise. That's right, you guessed it. Probably because it's the title. Robotech Voltron.
Way to move forward from one polarizing topic to another. Crossovers are kind of a hot topic for fans of any shows or basically any medium. Some people think that they don't really need to exist, others think that they can be fun and even something to really enjoy, but everyone can agree that there's a right way and a wrong way to do them. Some people would say that you should have two things that are similar, otherwise you're mixing things that shouldn't go together at all. But I think that the more dissimilar two things are, the more interesting it is to see them mix. Like peanut butter and jelly. Two things that are totally dissimilar and yet totally enjoyable to see mixed. At least, that's the theory. Then there's other aspects, the writing, the art style, the direction, the entire concept itself. It either works together to make a surprisingly coherent structure, or the whole thing collapses. And, like an allegory represented by various stock images, it's got to do this at a solid pace and time frame where the audience will get bored and leave. Now from a production standpoint, it's easy to see why Robotech and Voltron are both similar products. Both were mid-1980s adaptations of Japanese animations meant for audiences of a younger age in the United States, and both were pretty revolutionary in terms of introducing Western audiences to something that is now quite iconic. Both shows adapted multiple animes into one frame, connecting once unattached pieces to make a universe, as well as an elongated program. Key differences can be noted from this point, however. While both shows were mecha hits featuring human cast members, Robotech was theoretically a scientific show. Voltron, meanwhile, had a highly mystical theme to it mixed with the mechanical beasts. Robotech was famous for keeping the deaths and violence of the storylines they adapted completely intact, while Voltron was a little more infamous for censoring those aspects heavily.
There's a doctor on planet Ebb. Get me there fast!
Basically, both shows had a serious side to their characters and worlds, but each went about it differently, and thus the fans of both loved them for different reasons. A more obvious difference is their relevance in popular culture. While Robotech is essentially known by the fans and few others at this point in time, Voltron has slowly become somewhat of a household name, used very commonly in pop culture. The downside of that is that people still don't really know what the hell a Voltron is. Oh yeah, you ironically name your teams after them, and you make passing jokes in reference to references that you've never seen to references to the show, but most people still don't comprehend the original context in the slightest. So you could obviously see why comic companies would presume that the Voltron label would be a huge commodity for people, and also why it possibly wouldn't quite be so. Nonetheless, you can also understand why crossing over two franchises loved by nostalgia geeks would be such a popular concept. And in this case, you can also see why fans would be upset. For both Robotech and Voltron fans, this was the first comic or product period that they had seen for quite a long time. And all that waiting over such a span of years, had it really all come to this? Was this what they had been so patiently hoping for all those years? Was this what would bring back life to their fandom? And was this all they were going to see for another couple years?
I mean, fans are dedicated people. They wait for one thing for years and years and years, and when they don't get it, it can be infuriating, especially when instead they get some unneeded crossover.
My point is that, as a fan, your personal views on how your franchise is being run can often overshadow your vision. You go into this product with the deep, well-planted wish of the next big thing. The thing to bring it all back to life again. And you're not going to get that. Because it's a crossover. with that show you've heard of once or twice. And that concept of the thing you're getting not being the thing that you want or need is a huge problem for Robotech, I can promise you that. Every few years we get a promise for something new. A live-action movie proposal, a new animated film in the very slow works, a new short, a live-action movie proposal, a new comic, a new possible TV show, a live-action movie proposal, but we never get what we want. We get a cool little thing, a toy or a comic or essentially a bonus feature reunion special. But it's just not what we've been waiting for. And with all the cool projects we want to see go forward being put on hold or cancelled or reset, it's easy to see why the fans would get upset and why the creators are swamped for time.
But here's the thing about those little projects that get put out every few years. They're just that. Little projects. It's so easy to get angry at them for not being exactly what they want them to be, but realistically, how would they be that? And why do they need to be that? Our anger or bitterness at how our franchise is being run can sometimes just clog our minds to the point that we step over and tramp all over these little projects just because they're not quite what we want them to be. Sometimes we just need to clear our minds of all these thoughts and look at something for what it is. As simple as that.
What I'm getting at is that while Robotech Voltron would fail as a center stage comic for either Robotech or Voltron, as a standalone what-if crossover comic, it's enjoyable if you let it be. So what's the plot? In the far future of the Voltron universe, the Lion Force is relaxing on their day off when they are called into action to defend their planet from the mythological Omega Comet. The team forms the Voltron mecha and attempts to confront the asteroid, but chaos occurs when the asteroid and the team disappear entirely, leaving the planet defenseless against the forces of the Drool Empire. In the Robotech universe in the year 2009, the planet Earth is under attack from a strange enemy known only as the Zentradi. The Earth's only space fortress, the SDF-1, takes off from the planet in an attempt to lure the enemies away. Just as the ship is out of Earth's atmosphere, a large mass suddenly appears on a collision course with the Earth. The Zentradi ships are wiped out by this power, and the SDF-1 is able to execute an emergency fold just before they too are destroyed, disappearing in the action. All but one of the objects crash into Macross Island, and reveal themselves to be the Voltron Lion Mecha. The rest of the comic essentially deals with how these changes affect the two universes over a period of several years. Roy Fulker becomes isolated and detached, having lost the only two people he cared about in the incident, and Lotor too becomes aggravated by the disappearance of the princess and becomes hell-bent on getting her back. The Robotech Defense Force begin to worry about another group of Zentradi who might appear, and begin to rebuild the Lions as their own. Eris is once again taken over by the Drool Empire, and a small resistance forms to take it back. If you're confused by this point, don't worry. Most people are going to be using a little Google on this one. Let's see. Omega Comet. Oh, god damn it, Voltron Wiki! Seriously though, my jargon-filled recap might sound a little intimidating, but the comic does a pretty good job filling you in on what's going on. Usually crossovers expect you to be very well versed in both of what is being covered. For instance, I honestly couldn't get too far into the Doctor Who Star Trek crossover, because I'm just not a Star Trek fan. I got bored with the dozens of characters I had no context to, nor any reason to care about. But I never got bored with the Voltron sections of this comic, mainly because it was all framed in a way that this could be my introduction to these characters and this world. And in terms of capturing the worlds of these two series, god damn it. In terms of capturing the worlds of these two shows, the comic excels at it. This is the best art I've seen in any Robotech comic. Period. It's clear why the team insisted on working with this artist again for Academy. He's just astounding. The art captures the style and designs of both original programs, but still feels fresh off the slate and modern. The two worlds feel diverse in their appearance, yet merge cohesively. It never feels awkward to see these characters together. It never feels like this is a forced matchup visually. It feels totally natural and clean, and it nearly justifies the concept entirely. And yes, I do find it inherently interesting to see characters I know and love reacting to things they otherwise wouldn't have. The scene of Global and Ling discussing their predicament on Eris is one I'm particularly fond of. It's rich with atmosphere and fantastic visuals, and most importantly, when I read the scene, I hear the character voices in my head. It's been years since a Robotech comic has had dialogue written that well. The writing in this comic is actually done by two people. The first two issues are written by creative director Tommy Yoon, and the last three issues are penned by Bill Spangler, who wrote many beloved comics under the Eternity line. The entire plot outline is done by Yoon, and that part is done very well. But I would be lying if I didn't say that Bill feels a lot more natural at the job. Yoon is a bit like George Lucas. I think he's very good at thinking of universe and story concepts and writing outlines, but his dialogue can occasionally be a little bit cringeworthy. Despite this, it's very clear that a lot of work was put into this series to make it more of a treat for fans. I get the feeling that Yoon, naturally a Robotech fan, watched hours upon hours of Voltron to get all these little Easter eggs and treats together. At a con, he stated something like that he wanted the crossover to be with the original Camp 1980 series, including references to aspects that other comics have strongly avoided because they haven't aged well. Basically, this comic is the only modern Voltron comic that isn't a part of a reboot, at least as far as I can tell, and thus fans of that show might find it enjoyable. Or not. I really don't know. The story seems very self-aware from a structural standpoint that it's not going to be a long-standing chapter in either fandoms or universes. Obviously, by the end, they find the reset switch and the whole thing never happened. Despite this, it tries its best to still contribute to the overarching sagas where it can. For instance, the start of issue 2 features various flashbacks expanding on the childhoods of both Roy and Lotor, and Jesus Christ, can they be really heavy! Seeing a young Roy crying at his father's funeral as he promises to protect his new family is something that I now see every time that I think about the character. Also, this is Rick's mom. Huh. Weird. The Lotor sequence also shows off a key sequence of scenes that were referenced throughout the series as a setup for the entire program. This is the Druil Empire attacking the castle and King Alfor making his last stand as he steals away the keys to the Lion Force for future generations. And, once again, this sets up the entire Voltron series and kinda makes me want to watch it now.
Do you accept my offer?
I'll never surrender my people or myself to you.
Drop the gun, gently.
Let her go!
Run!
Alert the team!
I could have destroyed Voltron. Now I'll do it.
Hurry, Princess! I'll hold him off while you get away.
Come with me.
He may have other forces nearby.
Watch for his laser sword.
Ha!
Of course, the comic basically eventually befalls to what all comics I read nowadays do. It has a solid pace until the final issue when it rushes the entire thing in like 4 pages, shoving the conclusion to a billion concepts that they had wanted to build up into that space in an attempt to give a good climax. But I can't say that's this comic's fault. Like I said, it's basically an industry standard by this point. 5 issues just isn't enough space to tell a good, complex story, especially when it gets to stories as complex as Robotech and Doctor Who. Overall, I'd say Robotech Voltron has fun with what it has, branching out as far as it can with the premise it's delivered without overgrowing its welcome. It's definitely a good quick read if you're ready to accept it as it is, but if you want to grab a copy, you'd better go quick. DC Comics actually lost the rights to Robotech earlier this month, so once their stocks sell out, that's it. There's basically never going to be a print of this strip again, since it's entirely unlikely that another comic group will ever have the rights to both franchises at the same time. I mean, obviously there's going to be copies on eBay, but it's still going to be weird to say the least.
So that's Robotech Voltron, a nice little standalone what-if comic, but undeniably something that's going to be forgotten very quickly. Now personally, I am looking very forward to this next era in Robotech, and I have not a clue where it's going to go. I'm hoping to see something of a little more variety than we've seen the last few years. Maybe a Masters comic, or, you know, any comic that's not Macross Saga or a tie-in. That'd be really fun to see. Until then, I'm Cougar, and that's all you need.